Hello again, and welcome to Leafwire's Industry Trailblazers, where we speak with and learn from some of the industry's true pioneers. Today, it's a great pleasure to welcome Vib Gupta. Vib is a software engineer and entrepreneur currently serving as CEO of CannMenus.com, a big data analytics program designed specifically for the cannabis industry. Vib and his co-founder started CannMenus to meet the urgent need for reliable, data-driven solutions to support the rapidly growing cannabis market. CannMenus Pro equips cannabis brands and retailers with in-depth insights and analytics. And some of the largest cannabis brands and retailers across North America rely on their platform to understand market penetration, prospect new retail accounts, access SKU-level sales data, optimize inventory management, monitor price trends, and navigate competitive dynamics. Welcome, Vib.
Thank you so much, Mike. Great to be here for sure.
Great to have you. So, yes, thanks for joining us today. And let's just start maybe at the beginning. Maybe can you talk about how you got into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Ever since I had my first kind of early experiences with cannabis, I definitely was fascinated just by the plant. When I was growing up in Illinois, it was very, very illegal. And so it was, something that you're told, like most of us that are around my age or older, you're told, from a very early age that it's really, really bad. It's going to ruin your life. And then you get into it and you find that it's not necessarily that way, right? Aside from just the experiences kind of consuming cannabis and, the camaraderie, getting together with fellow, people who were into the plant, just the emerging kind of scientific and innovative nature of starting with the black market and kind of moving towards when things started becoming more medically licensed and things like that. All of that development really fascinated me. So I was, from a very early age in high school and college, always just kind of online, reading about the developments of things, kind of rooting for the emergence of the industry in general. A lot of people from the community that I grew up in, just a suburb of Chicago, which was very, very strict on cannabis. People end up getting in trouble too, and just seeing people's lives get completely changed and how wrong that was, really made me want to see a change in cannabis. And to be honest, for a long time, I really thought that it was going to be something that stayed in states like California and Washington and Colorado. I didn't expect the change to come to Illinois in 2014. I was very skeptical that anything, actual progress would come to Illinois in terms of a medical program. But I was very wrong. Less than 10 years out after I, left high school, Illinois was basically fully ready to go completely adult use. And that was a timeline that was really shocking to me. I did not expect that. So that's kind of how I got into just cannabis in general. I've also, just been a tech geek from the very early ages, from the earliest ages I could remember. And first times I got my hand on a computer, I was addicted to it. I just wanted to play around with a computer and learn how things work, break things, install new things, and, always had that kind of build and break mindset. So, combining those two things, starting CannMenus with my love of tech and cannabis and being a part of this industry, when the opportunity came, it was hard to pass that up.
Cool. So perfect segue then. Can you introduce us to CannMenus and how it works? And I understand it's data, right? So maybe if you could tell us about where the data comes from and what you do with it and why that's valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely data that is, the core competency of me and my co-founders as software engineers. We met working at a bunch of different startups that we really worked at early in our careers in Chicago that were very focused on specifically real-time big data. So some of the first companies that I worked at after I got my degree, were specializing in things like social media analytics, taking a look at, real-time feeds of social media posts and trying to do some analytics and insights on that data. And another company actually that I worked at after was where me and my co-founders met, and that was taking a look at Internet of Things data, definitely an emerging sector at the time, but really taking a look at real-time data from assets out in the field, like trains, planes, and engines and things like that, to try to predict failures and really just try to bring the industrial companies that were a little bit more behind in technology into more of the digital real-time software and data-driven age. So that's really how we got started. What our platform does is take in cannabis data from the e-commerce platforms. So essentially, anybody as a retailer, if you have your menu online on one of the major platforms that we can gather data from and make sense of that data, we do that basically multiple times a day, gathering all the data, putting it through our normalization layers so that we can kind of label and, like I said, really make sense of the data, clean it up where necessary. We all know how data can get very, very messy, and that's definitely, I think, a core pillar of just data engineering is knowing to expect messy data and knowing, putting in the processes to clean that up the best as you can. In cannabis, that has been definitely true from the beginning. The data is all over the place, not because, any one person did anything particularly wrong. It's an emerging space, and that's just kind of how things go when things are emerging and there's not, clearly defined boundaries around, for example, what exactly you call things or how exactly the best way to market and label things are. So the CannMenus platform essentially monitors what's going on in retail, and provides that data to brands, retailers, anybody else who's kind of taking a look at the industry or working with the industry and wants to see, how products are moving, what retailers are selling, and how quickly those items are selling as well.
So it could be a brand, or it could be a dispensary as well, right? Would you say that data is valuable to both brands and dispensaries?
I would, yeah, absolutely. The first segment that we really had in mind in terms of our B2B products were the brands in the industry. It was very clear just talking to different brand owners and sales reps at these different brands that they really were, not providing, that retailers really weren't providing the insights that these brands needed to actually, make sure that their products were on shelf, right? So because of that disconnect, we realized that brands could, in particular, greatly benefit from the data. And so the first things that we put together were kind of ways for brands to, on a widespread scale, monitor, how their products are doing in retail, whether they're still on menus, whether there might be some, low stock indicators that we could give them to help them reach out to the retailer before a stock out occurs. But really, that was the first customer segment that we found that was completely underserved. Brands were really flying blind, for lack of a better term. And it was a situation where brands didn't really have anything else to do besides call a retailer that they just sold into, every couple of weeks, every week, to just ask how it's going, instead of, the alternative that, we had envisioned was, contact that retail buyer with some of the data already in hand so that you can make their job easier, it makes your job easier, and really, ideally help out the industry as a whole.
So they could even send a report to a buyer to say, hey, here's how our product did last month.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Instead of just calling the buyer and asking them questions about, how do we do? Do you guys need more product? It's much more impactful, we found, to reach out to that buyer and say, hey, it looks like, cherry gelato eighths that we gave you a month ago did really, really well. It looks like they're almost stocked out. They've been moving pretty well based on the data that we have. We just got a new crop in. Did you want to, place another order for that reason? That's much more impactful.
Sure, of course. Well, so given the basic idea that that data is messy, and also because I've seen CannMenus, I suppose we could have even showed it to people right now if we wanted to. We could still do that. But maybe can you talk about the challenges? Because I know that it's complex, even when you have a good interface. What are the challenges that customers run into with managing the data? Because you've got your higher level decision makers, right? Who are really guiding the overall direction of a company, developing new products, deciding what to emphasize in the market. And then you've got your salespeople that are out there managing these accounts, right? So it sounds like there are different roles for the data within different organizations. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, there's really so much that you can do with the data. Really, something that we struggled with as a company, as a small company, in our early entrepreneurial journey is what exactly should we focus on building, right? I mentioned that we decided to focus on brands because we felt that there was the most white space there in terms of brands not really having much visibility into what's going on at their retail partners or partners that they're trying to get into that they're prospecting for. But other uses for the data, just like you said, it could just be taking a look at what trends are emerging to try to inform where the demand is, where you should be building. Almost every cannabis company, I think, starts with one kind of niche category or even a subcategory. Within that, let's say they start making chocolates, for example. But again, almost everybody ends up taking a look at different things, different ways to diversify their product mix and get into other categories. So certainly not just account management, but demand planning is big. And on the other side of it, for retailers, I would say the biggest advantage would be the competitive monitoring, right? Retailers, I think, have a good amount of technical tools, from their own POS and from their own e-commerce menus where those are out there in kind of viewing and managing their own data. But it's the everyone else's data that was more nebulous, kind of before tools like ours came around. So just really being able to see how you're doing against the competition and benchmark those things are very important as well.
So you could identify geographically, for instance, all the locations that are within a radius from your location and see what products are selling in those locations?
Exactly. That's exactly it. You can kind of see, what the assortment makeup is on those menus. You can get very specific in terms of, which retailers you're looking at too. It's not just, market-wide anonymized data, which of course is very useful in its own right as well. But yeah, that's the biggest advantage, is being able to kind of go head to head, your retailer against another very specific retailer. And not only compare the assortment, but really take a look at what the promotional and discounting strategies are. I would say that the biggest, the thing that we're most proud of that we've built on the technical side is making sure that all of this data is delivered in real time, right? So kind of going back to our roots as data platform engineers for real-time platforms like social media and Internet of Things, if I'm looking at insights from Twitter yesterday, that's definitely not as valuable as what's going on right now in this minute, right? We live in a very fast-moving world. Cannabis is 100% the same way, particularly, in times like the pandemic, when there's a lot of major new markets going online and ramping up. And product selection and, just supply was a little bit more in flux. It wasn't always easy to kind of keep track of data in real time. And, we were definitely proud to be one of the first platforms that offered, multiple daily refreshes a day, not taking a look at yesterday's data or the week before, but really what's going on, very close to when you're on the platform.
Got it. So because I've heard this complaint a lot about data platforms, that data gets old. So it sounds like you've really already addressed that and your data is real time.
Yeah, and that was the first, that was kind of the first problem that we insisted on solving, and we held ourselves to very high standards around that. I think that we could have built a platform that refreshed data once a day, and it would have been, pretty valuable in its own right. But I will say there's another kind of piece of our platform that's consumer facing that we had in mind as well from the beginning. We kind of like to describe that as like a kayak.com type interface, but instead of travel products, you're looking at cannabis. So we do have a search engine, kind of like Kayak does for travel. You can do the same thing for cannabis products at cannabis dispensaries, and take a look at if it's the same SKU available in multiple retailers, who has the best promotion, who actually has this SKU in stock right now. Just going back to my early roots in the Illinois market, being more closely connected with the medical side of the industry than adult use, before things had transitioned in Illinois, we really, didn't want to offer a platform that medical patients were using, where they would find something, that should be in stock at a retailer, and then they would get to that retailer after work and find that it's stocked out, late last night or early in the morning, right? So, definitely offering tools that are real time benefits businesses in terms of the data insights. But there is also this whole kind of consumer product search angle that we had in mind and kind of insisted on building to optimize for. And that ended up just being, I think, very useful for both sides of the company. So,
Wow, that's really cool. So can you maybe talk about a success story? Because obviously, I think our audience wants to know, based on my investment, what kind of ROI will I see, right? I mean, that's it. Everybody's driven by ROI. If like that's it for everyone at this point, right?
yeah, absolutely. Definitely a few success stories that we've been very, very proud to kind of see come to light with our clients over the years. A couple that in particular that come to mind. There's a brand that we worked with very early on in our company's development, and early on in this brand's kind of rise as well. They're an Illinois brand, kind of going to California to launch their own flower line. They started out as an accessories-only company in Illinois with things like rolling trays and kind of tools for storing your cannabis on the go, carrying cases and things like that. In California, having, especially with their backgrounds as business operators that that came from industries that sold into things like convenience stores, they were very, aware that without the data, distribution would be, that much harder, right? So one of the cool success stories was just helping them, launch in California. And in the early days, really know exactly who to reach out to for their products and make sure their products weren't stocking out. I think that really validated some of our early kind of hypotheses of, will this data help you stay on retail shelves by making that retail buyer's job easier? And that certainly resonated. The retail buyers were surprised, when they got a phone call and they, this brand were already able to tell them like, hey, we already, we know that, cherry gelato or, this and that were the best sellers. That's awesome, and retail buyers were surprised, and it resonated because that's a brand that retailers want to work with. They don't want a brand that's always going to be calling them and making them do more work. It really does make their job easier when you can, approach them with something that makes sense to where they can just, have that justification for the reorder right away. You don't have to kind of dig and try to find that out. So just, the initial launch and helping them expand quickly was very, very cool success story. But beyond that, after they got a little bit of traction and there was a little bit of data over time in terms of which of their products were performing the best, they did find that, there was a niche in the 7-gram flower category in particular. And that was where, they decided to double down. So I love that story because it shows, how data can help you out in different ways. initially it's just whatever products we have, let's make sure they don't stock out and let's push them out to retailers. And then after you have a little bit of, time under your belt and a little bit of data to look at over time, they were able to kind of hone in and double down on the products that, that were winning the most in retail. And not just based on gut feeling, which I think gut feeling can definitely, take you a certain distance, especially in this industry, which is just very passion driven. But having the data to kind of back up your gut feeling, that it just gives you that much more confidence and just helps you kind of blaze ahead, right? So,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And now I understand also that you guys are bringing out a new version of your product, right? Called Whole Sync.
Yes, CannMenu's Whole Sync. We're really excited about that product. This basically, I think, addresses a problem that we recognized relatively early on with the users of our data is, and we would get this all the time. It would be like, CannMenus is great. We love going on the platform. We love looking at these things. It's super useful. But I'm finding that I go to CannMenus and then I also open up, a couple of different browser tabs looking at different data sources that can, enhance the insights that you're providing. Would you be able to combine these things into one flow so I don't have to always be going into one data source and one spreadsheet for certain types of data and then kind of cross-referencing that with the CannMenus data. And so that's really what Whole Sync does, utilizing data from wholesale ordering platforms. And so, for example, one of the sources that we can integrate with is cannabis. So any brand that is on the cannabis platform can supply their API key that they already pay cannabis for, and we can basically incorporate their data into the insights that we're already providing on their retail accounts, right? So now it's not just, data that shows, how things are performing on e-commerce menus. It's the whole story from when that retailer placed the wholesale order, how often they're reordering on wholesale, what products they bought, when those products got placed on menu, what the pricing and promotions were, for those products on menu. So it gives you really the whole picture, the whole sync, if you will, end to end, from wholesale to retail. So we're really excited about that product. One of the things that we've been trying to do on the product and tech side is reduce the amount of browser tabs you have to open up to get a full picture. And I think from the first version of that platform, we've reduced it from 2 to 1. And or I will say from let's say 3 to 2, and now we can go from 2 to 1, incorporating additional data streams from your CRM, and really the sky's the limit. So yeah, absolutely. Especially in today's AI-driven age, you can definitely make sense of more data sources in the right way, and we want to be able to be ahead of that curve.
Great, thanks for that. Okay, so definitely covered a lot of good nuggets so far. So I want to just, in closing, just kind of broaden it a little bit, because I know you're an entrepreneur. CannMenus is a startup. Maybe you could just talk about, number one, how would you characterize the challenges around being an entrepreneur in our industry? And then, adding on to that, do you recommend this industry to other aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Knowing what you know now.
Knowing what I know now, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Somebody asked me that same question yesterday, and it didn't take me long to answer. His specific question was, knowing what you know now, just like how you phrased it, would you do it all over again? And, I thought about it for a second, because, if you don't think about it, maybe you're not considering the other side. But it didn't take me very long. I mean, yeah, I would absolutely do it again. It hasn't been without its challenges. I think, everybody who's been involved in the cannabis industry, whether on the tech side or on, the operator side or the any other types of ancillaries, have, experienced their own roller coasters. It's an industry of entrepreneurs, which makes it very fun to work in, and something that is I think, a unique experience because everybody really cares. Not many people are just in cannabis to earn a paycheck. If you wanted to earn a very stable, steady, top paying paycheck, you're not really going to be doing it within the cannabis industry.
Yeah, really, I'd say you're in the wrong place for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody has a story and a connection to the plant, which is always fascinating to hear. So, in that respect, it's unlike any other industry, especially as an entrepreneur and as a young entrepreneur. There's just so many opportunities to be had, which is very exciting on the tech side, innovation, and building something for an industry where you can actually have an impact. That's all really cool. But of course, as as you were kind of alluding to, hasn't been without its challenges. It was a tough experience launching a startup right when the pandemic was hitting. So, right when we thought that, all right, we're ready with our tech to get out there and start talking to people and getting face to face, nobody was face to face for, the next year. So that was difficult. And I think, the first few gatherings, conferences, and expos after the pandemic were incredible. I just remember walking through MJ BizCon 2021. It was the first one, I think, in a couple of years. And just having, a big smile on my face. It was like a kid in a candy store. I couldn't believe it. The expo was amazing. Everybody was so happy to be meeting in person again. And, that was definitely a challenge, just building more in the shadows and doing everything on video calls. And I don't know if you remember Clubhouse, the audio only kind of, chat rooms and things like that. Yeah, for sure. So emerging out of kind of those shadows and into the real world was a great experience. And then as we know, it's just been, a roller coaster ride for other reasons, with capital being, a little bit harder to access if you're a young startup, and, markets kind of, being maybe a little bit more of a downturn more quickly than people had expected in terms of sales plateauing and everything else that is happening in the past couple of years with hemp and other regulatory challenges, and just things needing to be shaken out. But that's I think that is par for the course in an emerging industry. A lot of it is growing pains. I wouldn't have it any other way as an entrepreneur. Sometimes I think about, maybe I could have just done something in a more stable space, but it wouldn't have been the same because the passion wouldn't have been there, the excitement wouldn't have been there, and for me, that's been worth it.
Great answer. I love it. Yeah, I can't disagree with any of it. It's like, I think the pandemic had the effect of cleaning out a lot of people that weren't as committed. And I think to have come through that and still be here, it's it's just demonstrating that passion. It's all about mission, and this is a cause. It's not just an industry, it's a cause.
Yeah, 100%. It's not always going to be frothy times, I think. Yeah, absolutely. So that's just the reality.
And I, of course, I didn't say this at the outset, but of course, we just put out our press release the other day. We are so excited at Leafwire Media to be partnering with CannMenus. So glad to be working with you guys, and your product. We want to be representing and offering the best products, and we feel like CannMenus ticks that box. And also we want to work with people we like, and so you guys are great, and it's a pleasure to be moving forward together with you and CannMenus. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, likewise, we're certainly excited to be working with a company of Leafwire's caliber. You guys have been around, for a long time, and a lot of people really respect what Leafwire has done for the industry. So excited to be a part of it.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Vib. It'll be interesting, when we do this again in 6 months or a year from now. So we'll look forward to that.
100%. Would love to talk more.
All right. So we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mike.